Whenever you filled up your gasoline tank in recent years, a few cents of every dollar spent trickled down to a country that many can't even locate on the map, Venezuela. This country has influenced almost every aspect of our lives in recent decades due to its vast oil reserves. From the asphalt used on its streets to the production of rubber, plastics, shoes, smartphones, furniture, and many other products, Venezuelan oil has always had some form of involvement in our daily lives. However, the question arises of how a country so rich in natural resources can simultaneously be ranked as the second poorest in the world, with such a precarious quality of life. To grasp the magnitude of the problem faced by the Venezuelan people, a survey conducted in 2021 by the Andrés Bello Catholic University revealed that 99.5% of the Venezuelan population lives in poverty, with less than $7 per day. About 77% of these people have only $32 per month, meaning practically $1 to get through the day. This implies that 3/4 of the population, equivalent to 21 million people, twice the population of Portugal, live in conditions of misery. In contrast, Venezuela boasts the title of the country with the cheapest fuel in the world, where a liter of gasoline costs less than 20 cents. This disparity raises intriguing questions about the country's economy. While gasoline is extremely affordable, the vast majority of the population in the communities around the capital, Caracas, struggles to access food and water to quench their thirst. The crisis in Venezuela is overwhelming, but the country still thrives in sectors such as aesthetics, casinos, luxury apartments, and much more. It is a paradox where the population suffers from hunger, money is virtually worthless, and the government continues to flaunt a false image of a perfect nation. This is the story of a state that was once the fourth richest in the world but is now submerged in the mud of poverty and misery. This is the masked and distorted reality in which the Venezuelan people live. If this situation already seems strange on its own, the narrative deepens even further into this dark cave. Venezuela, which was once one of the richest countries, now faces a dark and profoundly contrasting reality. This is the story I share today, showing how, on December 14, 1914, a crucial point was marked in Venezuelan history with the discovery of the first commercial oil well in the state of Zulia, an event that not only represented a radical transformation but also altered the country's trajectory, propelling it from a remote and obscure Andean country to emerge as one of the leading oil producers in the world under the rule of dictator Juan Vicente Gomes. Thanks to Gomez's strategies and maneuvers, Venezuela quickly rose to the position of the world's second-largest oil producer in 1935, trailing only behind the United States. This dynamic centered around oil had significant impacts on the country, bringing wealth and power but also rendering it more vulnerable in political and economic spheres. The excessive dependence on oil, instead of being a source of salvation for Venezuela, turned into a font of inequality, poverty, and misery that persists to this day. While the government enriched itself increasingly, the population did not experience the economic benefits from oil. The first banks were established, and the oil industry offered significantly high salaries, creating a service-based economy around it. This led farmers to abandon their ancestral lands to migrate to cities in pursuit of oil-derived wealth. This phenomenon occurred due to the growing demand for oil in the early 20th century, resulting in the appreciation of the bolivar, Venezuela's currency. This dynamic is crucial for two main reasons. Firstly, it made the importation of foreign goods more accessible. Secondly, it increased the cost of exporting goods. This meant that producers in Venezuela struggled to export, while consumers realized that purchasing foreign products was more economical. In the meantime, the world was facing the Great Depression. In response, the United States allowed the dollar to depreciate against other currencies. In just a decade, the bolivar experienced a 70% increase and became one of the strongest currencies on the planet. This marked the beginning of a phase in which Venezuelans could import luxury goods, secure dignified jobs, and enjoy modern amenities. However, society was increasingly plunging into an overwhelming dependence on oil. By the end of the 1930s, all aspects of trade, salaries, and prices of goods were now tied to their overvalued currency. In 1939, Caracas became the most expensive city in the world, resembling a remote diamond mining town, governed as the personal paradise of a dictator until his death in 1945. Juan Vicente Gomes was one of the richest men in Latin America, controlling extensive land areas and monopolies in various industries such as paper, meat, and dairy. To protect his interests, he created the country's first army, suppressed opposition, and concentrated revenue collection power in the government. After his death, the Venezuelan government followed his approach, taking control of industries and preserving Gomez's legacy and subsequent leaders. After World War II, President Isaías Medina Angarita sought to renegotiate oil contracts signed during Juan Vicente Gomes's dictatorship. Foreign oil exploring companies contributed only a small percentage of profits to the local government. In response to this situation, in 1943, Medina Angarita enacted the oil law, introducing the 50-50. Its principle aimed at equally dividing oil exploration profits between the Venezuelan government and foreign companies. However, challenges arose when Juan Pablo Pérez Alfonso, Minister of Oil, observed that the 50-50 principle made Venezuelan oil less competitive compared to the Middle East. In this scenario, in 1947, a Venezuelan delegation led by Pérez Alfonso presented the principle to Middle Eastern countries, inspiring them to adopt similar laws and make Venezuelan oil more globally attractive. Society faced issues such as poverty and inequality, with low productivity but significantly increasing salaries due to conditions dictated by the international oil prices. Business success became strongly tied to luck, thriving during periods of high oil prices. This discouraged additional efforts, encouraging well-paid positions in the government, often involving bribery. Despite social spending and state funding for jobs, the lack of quality, not politically implicated jobs resulted in constant unemployment. To address this situation, food prices were kept low, further harming agriculture. Venezuela underwent a second attempt at democracy, but the excessive oil revenue resulted in a democracy without political accountability. The president became authoritarian, and the pursuit of wealth in an economy that did not value labor led to a political structure corroded by corruption. Despite challenges, Venezuela continued to grow economically rapidly. Subsequent presidents sought to increase oil revenues, leading to the creation of OPEC in the 1960s. Now, oil-producing nations determine prices and production, no longer the oil companies. Small businesses without state funds quickly failed, while 99% of the largest artificially inflated companies accounted for 75% of total production. No one, from the common people to the leaders, considered what would happen if oil prices fell. Companies depended on the state, consumers relied on an overvalued currency, and most jobs were state-maintained. The political structure ensured that funds were not cut, leading to the accumulation of enormous debts. Today, Venezuela faces the consequences of decades of questionable economic choices and disastrous policies. The once promising and resource-rich country now grapples with a deep and widespread crisis. The population, which once benefited from oil wealth, now faces daily challenges to meet basic needs. Accumulated debt and decaying infrastructure silently witness what happened when easy wealth was not managed responsibly. Wealth exists only in the memories of some and in history erased by time, and the country's dream of prosperity seems to be just another tale to escape the sad reality that plagues the nation.